Good evening, everybody. We're gonna get started shortly. Just gonna hang on for a little bit and let some people roll in. How was everybody's weekend, though? And I'm just trying to wait and see if my TA Shy will be on this evening. I know she sometimes usually jumps on a little bit after the top of the hour, so. But yeah, I hope everybody had a great week. Had a restful weekend. And while we just wait for a few more people to roll in before we get started, and the only reason I'm just kind of hanging on before we really dive deep into everything is because, and I know as loud as people roll in, I just really don't like repeating myself or like having to re-explain something. So I'm gonna give it till, let's see, it's 8:03. We'll give it till like 8:05. But if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat and I'll go ahead and answer anything specific for you guys that are already in here. I did see one question a little bit earlier. Can you get into biotech with a communications degree? So actually, I'm not sure if you saw the video I posted earlier, but that touched on that just a bit. The differences between some of the STEM focused roles versus the non-STEM roles. So similarly to the way that other industries work, where like tech, for example, you have the tech industry and you have technical roles. You also have non-technical roles. So HR, finance, business development, education and training, all those departments are typically people that do not have a technical expertise, even though they work in the tech industry. So similar to that, the biotech, clinical research, pharmaceutical industries do have roles for people who do not have a scientific or STEM or healthcare background. So it's not going to be specific titles that I can give you and say, oh, this is the job to look for communications majors. You're going to have to kind of read between the lines with the job descriptions and with the positions that you're looking into to see what type of background and see if they're flexible with the type of experience that they allow for. So that's why I say, like, getting into the industry, you really need to be well informed, which is why I'm doing this course, to give people the foundation so people that don't have scientific backgrounds can understand the industry. So when you do find those roles and start to apply for them and then you get interviews, you are fully equipped with being able to speak to the industry, understanding it as a whole, and be a competitive candidate for those positions, even though your background may not be in the biotech space. So I hope that answers your question. But yes, there are positions for people with communications, psychology, any type of liberal arts degree. I've worked with people that had history degrees in Spanish or foreign studies, foreign language. And it's really just all about who you know and how you're able to market yourself in your application. So the way that you are able to market your experiences on your resume and tailor your experiences to the job description for the desired role. And also just your understanding of the industry as a whole and being able to speak to how that position that you find that you're applying to fits into the industry. So if you haven't taken a look at that video that I posted earlier, it's the most recent one that's on my page. Definitely check that out because that's going to go into more detail on that. I just signed up for your course and read over the syllabus. Super excited to learn. Definitely make sure if you are someone who is new to the course to go back and watch the previous videos that I posted, just so you have the context from the previous conversations Also, if you missed the previous live sessions and you're someone who is just getting exposed to this course, make sure you go on YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the previous lives that we've done are posted there, the full length, so you can hear the entire conversation and know what we talked about and take notes if you want to. I would also say I wonder if I updated it in the syllabus that I sent out. I can't remember. There's a link to a free GCP certification or a certificate that's self-guided. So make sure you do that as well. That is one of the first things I usually recommend for people who are interested in making a transition or starting to consider the biotech or clinical research or pharmaceutical industry. So that's something that you can do for free on your own time, and it'll help you understand and have a little bit more context to the topics that I cover. Okay, let's see what else. Okay. I'd love to get into clinical research, but I don't know how to pivot. I'm in pharma. What don't you like about pharma that makes you want to pivot to clinical research? I feel like most people that I know typically start in clinical research and their goal is to get into pharma. So I'd be interested to hear why you're looking to pivot rather than move laterally to another position in pharma. Because honestly, depending on the type of role you have, the pay tends to be better on the pharma side, especially if it's a big pharma company. So just a disclaimer. I have a bachelor's in biology and haven't done much with it, so I'm excited to see what's there. That's good to hear. You have one of the most beautiful smiles I've ever seen. Keep on shining, queen. Thank you. Let's see. I have an MPH. I was curious if clinical research would be a good fit. So we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth over the next couple weeks. But ultimately, I think like it's really not so much the degree, especially if you're someone with a master's degree or any type of advanced degree that is focused in some type of STEM or scientific area. It really just matters more so how you want to use that degree and what's going to be fulfilling to you. I can't tell you like, oh yeah, like clinical research will be a better fit because you have a public health degree, whereas like you might have more experience or you might be more interested in a certain topic that you might only get more exposure to on the pharma side of things. If you're looking for something like more commercial or health economics outcomes research, those roles typically fall more on the pharma side versus on the clinical research or biotech side, just because as we're talking about the drug development process, which I kind of went and alluded to a little bit in my previous video as well, or in the most recent videos that I posted, is that there are some differences between the industries that are important to note depending on the type of role that you want. So if you're looking to be more involved with the drug development portion of things, so on the R&D side or the research and development aspects, clinical research and biotech roles may be a better fit versus if you're looking to be more involved with patient advocacy or patient engagement or health economics or anything related to analytics or post-marketing data or anything related to the commercial aspects of a product that's already on the market, then anything on the pharma or like the big pharma side of things would be a better fit. So it ultimately is up to you and what your interests are. But definitely having that master's degree, especially if it is related, is going to be helpful for you to be able to leverage your skills regardless, rather than having to kind of like advocate for why you deserve a job in the industry if you only have a bachelor's degree and you don't have an extensive work history. So that's just something to consider. I've been in clinical research for 13 years now. I'm ready to move on to a new role. So what exactly are you looking for? Are you looking to move to a different industry like pharma or biotech? Or are you looking to move upwards in your career from clinical research, maybe laterally to a different department or a functional area? That'd be good to know. Let's see. Hey girl, I did your one-on-one and I've had 2 interviews for CMC roles since. Oh my goodness. I am so happy to hear that. Please let me know how those interviews go. And you know what? I remember when we had our call, like and I think I told you this, like you're going to have no issue being able to leverage your skill set for those like CMC roles. It's just important to understand like, okay, based on your degree and the things that you're interested in, what roles exist for your specific scenario. So I'm really, really glad to hear that. I'm having a hard time getting into clinical research. I have a master's in biotech, recent grad. So the thing with, I appreciate you sharing that recent grad portion. The thing with the recent grad is now, I mean, especially with like clinical research, it's one of those areas that you're starting to see. Just like tech, a couple years ago, you're seeing like a lot of content creators pop up and say, oh, you have great work-life balance, like it pays 6 figures. So you can imagine that like people are immediately drawn to, being able to make money and, hearing some of these things that get people excited. So it's one of those areas where you have to find the positions that not everybody is applying to. And I say this all the time. I think I've said it on every single live we've had so far. If everybody is applying to clinical research associate positions, I personally would not be applying to those positions, knowing that that's the only thing, that's the videos that you see with 10,000 likes on TikTok, or like the ones that you see people romanticizing on social media, because you can imagine everybody is, massively applying to those roles. Unless you like are, completely set on you have to be a CRA, I would be looking for roles that are less popular and, are not getting as much publicity right now, and be applying to those instead. So that means you're going to have to do some digging. That means it's going to be a little bit more of a reading between the lines, and going through and kind of like sifting with a fine tooth comb those positions on the company website, and also doing some targeted and tailored searches to the approach that you're taking. I know a lot of people tend to just get on LinkedIn or go on Google and just search clinical research coordinator or clinical research jobs. And that's not going to cut it. If you want to find a unique position that's going to be something that not everybody is applying for, especially when you have the degree and have the qualifications, but you're lacking the experience. So that's something to take into consideration. So what I mean by that is when you're going on these websites or search engines, job board platforms, instead of searching biotech or instead of searching pharma blanketly, I would be looking for keywords or key skill sets that you have. So if part of your, degree curriculum, there was a specific course that you took that not everybody in the clinical research space is going to have taken that course, I would be searching specifically using those keywords. So things like biostats, because not everybody's going to be applying for biostatistician positions. Or I would be looking for, different types of roles or different keywords from different coursework that you've done. And then from there, when you find those positions, go through those job descriptions and pull out those important keywords that are going to help you find other roles. So for example, if you're finding acronyms in those job descriptions that are industry specific acronyms, I would then take that and go and search those acronyms. For example, CRF or case report form is one of those like buzzwords in the clinical research space. So I would be searching CRF or case report form in the search engine rather than searching clinical research jobs. And so then similarly to if you were to search on Google, it's going to give you all job descriptions that have the word case report form somewhere in the job description. You can take the same approach with things like, I'm trying to think of another one, like TMF or eTMF, electronic trial master file. If you're searching TMF specifically or you're searching trial master file, you're going to find only results that include trial master file somewhere in the job description. And so that way, it's not necessarily going to be only clinical research coordinator and clinical research associate positions. It's going to be other titles that involve the trial master file or involve like specific clinical documents that relate to clinical research. And so that way you're not applying to the same thing that 760 other people have applied to, and it gives you a better chance of being able to land an interview for those positions. The other thing is, if you're flexible, or, you know, if you say you're a recent grad, I would be looking into applying to site level opportunities. So looking for different clinical research sites, and also looking at academic medical centers that conduct clinical research. So if you live near a major hospital, or if you live in a city where they have like a major health system in your area, I would go on their website under careers and be searching clinical research and see what types of positions come up. Because you'd be surprised that a lot of the facilities near you are probably involved in clinical research in some capacity. I'm not talking about the small, like 15, 20 bed hospitals. I'm talking about like the large university affiliated academic medical centers. So the places that are known for conducting like research, like here, since I live in North Carolina, those are going to be the Duke universities and the UNC Chapel Hills. They're guaranteed. I can go on their careers page right now and find 15 different job descriptions for clinical research roles. And they're not going to be all clinical research associates or clinical research coordinators. So I hope that is helpful. I'm going to answer a couple more questions and then we'll kind of jump into the talking points for this evening. And what I'll do, I know last week I kind of sent out a document. It was just kind of like a little like pop quiz kind of thing, or like fill in the blanks based on our discussion. And we did some like case, I don't even know if I would call them like case studies, but we did some like case studies, examples to help you guys kind of solidify your understanding of biotech versus pharma versus clinical research. So like I said, I'll answer a couple more questions and then we'll go into that, and I'll do my best to answer any additional questions throughout. And I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that Shy joins, because she usually helps me with managing the comments while we're on these lives. But if not, we'll get through the best way we can. Okay, in addition to your Sunday office hours, are there any other days where you go live? Not specifically, mainly because I be working. Because I do work full-time, part-time, and I'm a part-time content creator, and have a lot on my plate right now, and a startup founder. So I go live when I can. The main days that I can commit to are Sundays. But what I try to do during the week, if I have any downtime or any extra time where I can kind of just have an hour to myself, I'll try to go live. But those will be more so like impromptu, so you wouldn't know about those unless you follow my page. So make sure to do that if you want to know anytime I go live. The other thing that I have is my YouTube channel. So anytime we go live here and do in-depth conversations like these, I will upload the full live recording to YouTube, usually within the day. I know last week we went live on Friday, and then it was Super Bowl weekend, and then the week just got a hold of me. So I didn't upload it until I think it was Friday night or Saturday. But typically I'm pretty good about making sure that the live recording gets updated or uploaded within 24 hours after we wrap up on the Sunday session. So if you ever miss one of these sessions, just make sure you go and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can watch everything there. I also have been uploading the content, like the actual videos that I put here on TikTok, over on YouTube. So if you want to be notified whenever those videos are posted, then just subscribe to my YouTube channel. I know some people are saying like, oh, you know, like Hillman Talk, I'm not really seeing it on my For You page anymore. And so I've also noticed like a lot less engagement with my Hillman Talk videos, which I'm still going to post regardless, but just make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel if you want to stay on top of, you know, as those videos are being pushed out. The other thing is with the syllabus, I've been absolutely fighting for my life trying to like stay on top of things. If you were on the live session that I had last week, then you know that I lost my SD card that I had filmed all the content on. So, and I gave myself until like the middle of this week to be able to find that SD card, and I did not. So I had to re-record all the content that you guys are seeing me post over the last couple of days related to this course. I had to refilm all that stuff over the last 2 days. So I've just been having to sit down and just re-edit all that stuff because I have no idea where that SD card is. So again, just bear with me. Got a lot going on, but doing my best to provide this information to you guys so you are able to be confident in your job search and as you go on to pursue careers in different industries. Okay, so last couple questions I see here. I'm a pharmacy technician, eager to get into clinical research. Okay, so hopefully this is helpful to you. I'm interested in switching over to the clinical research space. What does job stability look like? That's mainly going to depend on, it's mainly going to depend on the functional area that you're in. I'd say, honestly, most positions in clinical research are pretty stable. With CRO companies specifically, like some of them are going through like mergers and things like that, where they'll be acquired by like a larger company. And so I've seen over the past couple of years, it's usually more rare, but sometimes when companies are acquired, they will already have their own staff that they want to, put in some of those positions. And so they'll do a layoff. The one thing that I can say and like can speak to directly, because I've been laid off before in the biotech space, is most companies treat you very well in terms of like severance pay. So like the very first layoff that I ever was a part of, I hadn't been at the company for an entire year and I got like 6 months of pay as my severance to, at my regular pay rate. So, I wasn't like, I didn't have to be in a rush to look for a job. So in terms of like stability, I'd say the industry is pretty good, and then you still get a pretty good payout if you end up getting laid off. And once you have that experience under your belt, it's usually pretty straightforward with the process to secure a new opportunity. But again, that also goes into the piece of networking and why it's so important to establish relationships and maintain professional relationships, because I found that it's been relatively easy for me to bounce back and find a new opportunity anytime I have been laid off, because I have a strong network, because I've stayed in contact with people regularly, even my previous coworkers, not on an everyday, all the time basis, but, just checking in with them frequently, shooting them a text every now and again saying, hey, I was just thinking about you, that kind of thing. And so then if I've ever had to text them and say, hey, like I was a part of a layoff, or like my organization got restructured and I was impacted, they're literally like looking on their careers page and sending me opportunities on a daily basis. And I'm getting internal referrals. So, I think it kind of boils down to like the type of person you are and the functional area that you decide to pursue with clinical research. So as an overall industry, I think it's pretty stable. I'd say like biotech can be like a little more hit and miss, just because biotech typically have a lot less functional or therapeutic areas that they focus on. So sometimes I wouldn't say they put all their eggs in one basket, but like smaller biotechs, they typically are going all in like on a couple or like a handful of products, trying to get them approved. And so if one of them goes belly up, or for example, it goes through the clinical trial process and it doesn't do well, like it has a lot of side effects, or it has a lot of safety events, or, it could be almost anything. Like the data doesn't come back, and it's, they may be trying to help treat a certain disease. If the data comes back and the data shows that it doesn't actually help treat the disease, and they know that if they submit this to FDA, it's not going to get approved, then they may just say, okay, you know what, screw it. We're not going to pursue this drug any further. And as a result, anybody who was working on that product, it may end up in a layoff if the company decides to dissolve, or if they sell their assets to another company. So that's kind of like the way it goes. It's not just like, oh, we're just going to fire people just for the heck of it. There's always some type of like business decision or business reason as to why these things happen. So going into it, and again, like that's why it's important to understand the industry as a whole, because going into it and understanding the industry and how it works, and being able to have that like business mindset, even though your job may be more clinical, or even if it's not STEM and you're on the finance or business development side, being able to think broadly and think out of the box is going to be important when you get into these industries, because you need to understand how other people are thinking, not just about your individual job. Okay, so I think that kind of answers all of the questions that we had in here so far. Like I said, feel free to drop any other specific comments that you have throughout, and I'll do my best to answer them. But what we're going to do is we're going to kind of briefly run through a few things that I think will be helpful for you all. Okay, so for anybody, this first question is, and this is going to be just kind of like a group discussion. So for anybody who has already started applying to clinical research or any of the life science industry positions, what do you feel like has been your biggest challenge for being able to break into the industry or land an interview or that kind of thing? I'd be interested to know like how things are going for people if you are someone who has already started applying. So that's going to be like our main kind of discussion question, and I'll be answering questions around that. But the video that I posted today was around the drug development process. And I know last week on live, we did talk quite a bit about understanding the differences between pharma, biotech, and clinical research. So if you haven't had an opportunity to watch that live, make sure you go to my YouTube channel and check it out. But the reason I want to talk about the drug development process today is because understanding the process is going to be really key, especially if you're someone who has healthcare experience or has a healthcare background or some type of STEM background or a biology degree or some type of life science degree, and you're looking to land a position in the industry. You'll notice that on a lot of entry-level positions or like job descriptions, they're always going to say that you have an understanding of the clinical trial process or the clinical research process or the drug development process. They're going to say it in some type of way. They want you to have an understanding of this process and how drugs get to the market. And so if you're just like click and submit on all these applications and you don't know anything about the drug development process, I wouldn't say it's like a complete waste of your time, but it's going to be very telling. And again, like, why would you want to apply to a job where you don't know anything about it and you just want money? Because it's going to come to a point where you're like in over your head. Like a lot of people, especially like a lot of people who are pivoting into the industry, will find that it is very overwhelming to come in and, you know, go through the interview process and try to like walk the walk and talk the talk and then get into the position. And because you walk the walk and talk the talk so well, you don't have any support in the role. And now you don't know anything about, you know, the job that you're supposed to be doing. And, you know, after that, it's either sink or swim. So I don't want you guys to run into that, because I've heard horror stories about people getting into some of these positions, you know, just because they were adamant about wanting to, you know, have a six-figure paying job. But, you know, how are you going to be able to keep that once you get that job if you don't have an understanding of the drug development process and how your functional area relates to others? So with that being said, so the first thing we're going to talk about is kind of like the 4 stages of drug development. And so one, we're going to talk through each one of them, but the first stage is going to be the discovery and preclinical stage. And so this is where you're going to see lab and animal testing. So before drugs are even, you know, get to the point of being tested in humans and the clinical research that we know of clinical trial testing, we start out with the discovery and preclinical phase. And so that's going to be your, you know, kind of like before you move on to phase 1 studies. And so then after that, you move on to your clinical trials, which are your phase 1 through 3. And so this is where all of the testing in humans occurs. And so if you know anything about clinical research, tell me a little bit. Feel free to like drop a comment or something like that. But let me know if you know the difference between phase 1 and phase 2, or phase 1, 2, and 3 trials. That will help me kind of gauge how deep we need to go on this topic or how much people already know. Let's see. There's a person in the Discord that is a new PharmD grad and doesn't know what to apply for. Okay, thank you for letting me know. I'll definitely have to go and respond to that. Like I said, I have been kind of all over the place today, trying to refilm content and re-edit it to make sure that it's up for you guys so that we can have this live session. But yeah, it'd be great if they were up here to ask that question as well too. Because just having a farm, like I have a PharmD myself, so just having the PharmD alone is not going to be very like helpful for me to say, okay, what should you apply for based on this? Because I'm in regulatory, but I also have colleagues that work in medical affairs, that work in clinical operations, that work as medical writers. So it's not a one size fits all. Just because you have a PharmD, you should have this specific position in the industry. And I work in the biotech space. I know people that work in clinical research with a PharmD, and I also know people who work in pharma with a PharmD. So again, it's not a one size fits all approach. So I would definitely say to anybody who has an advanced degree or has a master's degree, whether it's a master's of science, a master's of healthcare administration, a master's of public health, just having that master's degree alone is not going to automatically, open the door to you getting an interview for every position that you apply for. Again, that's going to come with you being able to tailor that position or tailor your resume and make sure that it's targeted to the role that you're applying for. But I talked a little bit earlier about some things that you can do to target your search to get some of those positions that are not as romanticized or not as popular here on TikTok and different social media platforms. I feel like you see a lot of lists where, and I've even made lists myself of like, entry-level positions or roles that you can apply to depending on the type of background you have. But that doesn't mean just because, I'm a nurse and she said, here's a list of jobs that nurses can apply to. That doesn't mean go and apply for all 57 of those jobs without tailoring your resume or without understanding the drug development process or reading the job description to be able to pull out those transferable skills so you can highlight those in your resume. That's going to be the key step. It's kind of like, if you were someone who has a background in finance and now you're applying to a biostats position just because you got a master's in biostatistics. They're going to be looking at your finance background like, well, why do you want to work in this field just because you have this degree with no formal experience? They're going to want to see some type of connecting of the dots to help them understand, why you're making this pivot, or help them understand the context behind the experience that you got in finance that is going to be valuable to them to hire you as a biostatistician. So again, I think that context piece is going to be like super, super important as you guys are kind of like going through and listening to these lectures. Because none of this is a one size fits all approach. Any of the tips or feedback or advice that I give here is going to be like, okay, you do this and it's going to guarantee you a job. None of these things are going to guarantee anybody a job. It goes in with doing all these things in parallel. And that's going to increase your chances and give you the best possible outcome for being able to land a position. And of course, that is going to be for like 80 to 90% of people. There are those people who may live in rural areas or, because they applied for a hospital position at an academic medical center in their area. And because they were really, that hospital may have been really desperate to get people hired because they had a clinical study that was coming very soon. I've heard people say that like, I got lucky with getting this position because I applied and heard back the very next week and I had no experience and I did not tailor my resume. You'll hear those types of things too. But again, it kind of goes back to like, once you get that opportunity, what are you going to do with it? And having that knowledge and being willing to step up to the plate is going to be important for you. So we talked about discovery and preclinical phase. So that's like your animal testing. And then you have phase 1 through 3, which is going to be testing in humans. So when we're talking about those phase 1 through 3 and just kind of breaking down what that looks like. So phase 1 is going to be first in human studies. That's going to be testing for safety and making sure that the drug just doesn't kill anybody, essentially is the best way that I can kind of describe that. So when we're talking about safety, phase 1 trials are typically conducted in healthy human subjects. So that means even if the drug is to treat cardiovascular disease, or even if the drug is used to treat an oncologic disease, it's not going to be tested immediately right after it just got done being tested in rats and dogs. We're not going to test it in a stage 4 cancer patient. We are first going to test it in healthy human subjects to make sure that it is safe. And we also want to use phase 1 to kind of explore how these drugs are going to behave in the body. How long, what's the half-life? How long are, are traces of the drug still in the body after it has been administered to these patients? And so, like I said, it's going to be healthy volunteers. You're going to see anywhere from 20 to 100 patients that are participating in the study, because that's going to give us a good idea of the responses and different demographics and, different types of healthy human subjects. And during these phase 1 studies, we're testing really, really small doses. So they're going to be very low doses, and researchers are looking at the side effects and the metabolism primarily. And just kind of like a little fun fact for you guys, only about 70% of drugs move from phase 1 to phase 2. So the other 30% may not work out and they have to go and do some modifications, or they just go back on the shelf until it's a better time or a better opportunity to pursue those products. So if anybody has any questions about those things specifically related to phase 1, let me know. I know somebody did say, I've done research during phase 2 clinical trials for biopharmaceuticals. So that means you know what phase 2 studies involved in. So kind of moving into phase 2. Phase 2 is a really like pivotal point or a pivotal portion of the clinical research or drug development process, because these are going to be where our proof of concept studies lie. So here we're looking for efficacy and we're looking for side effects. So now we're moving on from healthy subjects and we're testing the drug in people that actually have the disease that we are looking to treat or looking to cure. So for example, you're going to see studies that are anywhere from 100 to 300 patients with the actual targeted condition. So if this is a drug for cardiovascular disease, we're going to be looking for cardiovascular patients or patients with cardiovascular disease to test this drug in. And so we're going to test not just low doses, but we're going to be testing different dosages of the drug, and we're going to continue to monitor safety. So first in phase 1, we only tested to make sure that the drug was safe and that nobody was just completely dropping dead or having so many side effects that there may be no potential benefit to the product. And so now we're actually looking to see, does it work on the targeted condition and is it safe at the doses that we're administering to these patients? And so with this one, just kind of a quick pop quiz. For phase 1, does anybody remember the percentage that I said moves on from phase 1 to phase 2? There was a number I just gave you guys of how many, or like what percentage of drugs move from phase 1 to phase 2. Okay, 70%. I was only gonna wait for one person because I know it could take a little minute for people to drop comments here. So that's correct. I did say around, this is, ballpark, around 70% of drugs move from phase 1 to phase 2. So only 33% or around 30-ish% of drugs move from phase 2 to phase 3. So that's a significant drop of the number of compounds that are moving forward from phase 2 to phase 3. And like I said, this is going to be the really pivotal step in drug development or in the trial process, because these are our proof of concept studies. After we do these phase 2 trials, then we're looking to have other small studies that are going to hone in and really get good data that's going to be robust and support our package. And so if our phase 2 study flops, then it may not be a good time to kind of move forward. We may need to go back and do additional testing or, modify the compound just a little bit to make sure that it's not going to, have those efficacy issues, or if there are a significant number of safety issues, we may need to go and do some modifications from that perspective or that regard. So 70% ballpark move from phase 1 to phase 2, and then around 33% move from phase 2 to phase 3. Okay, so any questions about that portion before we move on? Okay, cool. So then as we're moving on to phase 3, these are going to be our large scale trials. And so here we are basically confirming effectiveness. So phase 1, we looked at safety. Phase 2, we looked at safety and efficacy. And phase 3, we're really just looking, these are confirmatory studies to confirm that the drug actually works. And this is especially important for products that are treating conditions where they have competitor products that are already on the market. You're looking to have superiority, or for your product to perform better than the current standard of care, or the current product that, you know, most institutions or most physicians or, you know, prescribers use to treat their patients. Because if it doesn't have any benefit, you're not going to have any any way to kind of leverage your product in terms of being able to turn a profit after the product gets approved. So here in these confirmatory studies are where you're looking to compare the drug against placebo or a standard treatment. So you're going to do either some type of head-to-head study. So for example, you may be looking at Tylenol versus ibuprofen, because both of them are, you know, used for pain. So that would be kind of an example of what you can expect for a head-to-head study. So one product versus another that do similar things, or are approved for, or a product that is already approved for the thing that you want your product to be approved for, or against placebo. So basically patients are getting a sugar pill and that is broken up against patients that are receiving the actual active drug. And so you want to compare the placebo versus the active drug results, and your goal is going to be for the active drug results to perform better. And so now we're kind of increasing the number of patients as well that are part of these studies. We talked about, you know, small studies where it was like 20 to 100 patients, and then 100 to 500 or 300 patients. Now with phase 3 studies, we're looking at anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 participants worldwide. And this is going to vary. This isn't going to always be the case across the board completely, because there will be times where, especially in rare diseases or for orphan conditions, where just not a lot of people have the condition across the globe, you may not have 30,000 patients that even have this condition. So sometimes you may not be able to get 1,000 or 5,000 participants in your study. You may have to have less than that. But again, there are like different nuances that come along with regulatory guidances that are available from different health authorities like FDA and other respective countries. And you can, you know, look to those to help guide the number of patients that they look for in a typical study for phase 3 for it to be used as a confirmatory study. And so, you know, basically from there, doctors are monitoring the long-term effects and the side effects of the product. And so in those confirmatory studies, you know, of course, if the drug works, that's great news. But at the same time, in order for it to be, you know, something that can compare to the competitor product, or if there's not a competitor product, for it to be the best thing for patients to be willing, or for prescribers to be willing to prescribe the drug to their patient, they want to make sure that that the benefit outweighs the risk in the clinic. So if it's causing, you know, all these different side effects, and the patient already has stage 4 or like stage 3 cancer, and they're already, you know, doing radiation, or they're doing chemo, and they're having all these other effects, we don't want to add on a product that is going to just make their quality of life so much worse that it's like, you know, it's kind of, if they take it, then it just makes them worse off, but then they're just as bad off if they're not taking the drug. So that's another one of those things that we take into consideration with confirmatory studies as well. And so basically from there, the drug gets submitted to the health authority. So in the US, that's going to be the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA. In Europe, that's going to be the EMA, or European Medicines Association. In Canada, that's Health Canada. And most countries have their own respective health authorities that make that decision, or make that yes or no call on if a drug is able to successfully become marketed in their country. And so then we kind of move on from phase 1 through 3 to phase 4. And this is what we call the post-marketing phase. And so this is really where we're really able to collect our first bits of real world data. So now that the product is approved, we can actually, you know, get data across all types of patient populations, because just because the product is approved for one particular indication, doctors have the authority to prescribe drugs for off-label use. So they may find that, hey, this drug is approved for this condition, but I've noticed that it has some benefit in other areas. as well. So I'm going to prescribe it to my patients for this. And so that gives drug companies really good insight on other indications that they may want to pursue, or if there are certain side effects that are happening that they did not come up in the clinical trials process, that now we're starting to see because we have more patients taking the drug, that a lot of patients have, a certain side effect. And as a result of that, sometimes those things will need to be added to the drug label. Or for example, like sometimes over time, there may be like a buildup of drug in the body over time that may cause some type of like breakdown in musculoskeletal system, or it may cause, CVAs over time. So when we're starting to look at that real world data, those are how sometimes black box warnings get added to the label, that we have different indications that are pursued, and that we have additional data that can be added to various versions and iterations of the drug approved labeling. So I know that was a lot, but any questions on that so far? And if there are no questions, then kind of give me that last percentage that I gave you guys. So I know some of you dropped in the comments that from phase 1 to phase 2 is anywhere from 70%, or kind of ballpark number of 70% drugs move from phase 1 to phase 2, just to kind of check our progress and make sure people understood everything okay. Let me know if you remember what that percentage was of drugs that moved from phase 2 to phase 3. And it was, just to kind of give you a hint, it was less than half of that first number. Okay, perfect. Yep, most people are saying like 30-ish%, and that's correct. It was around 30% of drugs move on from phase 2 to phase 3. Okay, so perfect. So last week we talked a little bit about some of the different roles that exist within biotech, pharma, and clinical research. And we talked really high level about this because, and this is one of those things that honestly, I don't want to say I do not like doing a deep dive on this, but there are literally hundreds, and I'd even dare to say thousands of different titles, like different titles of positions in the different industries. So there's no way I could just sit here and kind of list off and say, oh, if you have a master's of science, you should be applying to all of these positions. There's no way for me to do that because there are so many positions that exist. Like, honest to God, I would if I could. Like, if there was, if there were, only a handful of roles for each position, then I would actually just make the list and put it on my website for free for you guys to go and download. But unfortunately, there are so many. And there's also new positions and titles that are popping up on a daily basis just out of need. Like real world data was not one of those things that you used to see. And now you see a lot of how I was just kind of talking about phase 4 and post-marketing studies and post-marketing data. You're now starting to see a lot of positions that are just dedicated to real world data or real world efficacy. So you'll see them called RWD or RWE roles. And again, this is one of those things that came up out of need. Like, we realized that, okay, we're past the clinical trials phases and the drug is approved now, but we need somebody to monitor, these post-marketing effects to kind of flag us if we need to do, if we need to take some action on our side. If there are certain indicators or there are certain signals that a lot of patients are having a side effect, and to kind of like analyze that data. So a lot of these positions pop up on a daily basis out of need for the company. And sometimes you won't even see the titles or the names of these positions consistently from company to company. AbbVie may call, their position one thing. They may call it like a research associate, and another company may call it a research scientist. So because of that, you have to understand the drug development process to be able to understand which phase or which portion of the process that those roles fall under and how they're categorized within the organizations. And then you also have to be able to pull out those buzzwords and those keywords so you can use that as your kind of benchmark for how you're searching for positions rather than a specific title. Because if you go on one company and search a title, you may go to another company and search that title and get no search results just because of how they're named. So with that being said, what I'll do is I'm going to kind of break down some of the functional roles by the stage that they fall in. And so, you know, kind of based on what we just talked about and going through like phase 1 where you're looking for safety, and then phase 2 where you're looking for safety and efficacy. If you have a particular interest in one of those areas, then this can kind of help you determine, okay, like I'm more interested in like the safety side of things, or I'm more interested in like, you know, being involved in safety and efficacy. So with preclinical, you're going to see a lot of positions around research scientists. You'll see, preclinical. So before we move into phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, for preclinical are where you'll see the bulk of your scientist positions. And the video that I made earlier today, or that I posted earlier today, has a lot of those positions listed out specifically by title. So you're going to see toxicologists, you're going to see research scientist, research associate, you'll see bioanalytical scientists, you'll see formulation scientists. So these are all going to be scientific positions that are working at the bench, working in the lab with the compounds, involved in, you know, the PK, PD aspects of designing the drug and making sure that the science is correct before we move that product into humans. And so then when we're moving into those phase 1 through 3 roles, that is where you're going to see a lot of those more popular, more glorified, more glamorized positions, like your clinical research coordinators, your clinical research associates. But you also have, trial master file specialists. You also have regulatory specialists, regulatory study startup specialists, or study startup specialist is what it's sometimes called at different companies. You'll have clinical trial associates, so that's different from clinical research associates. You will also see a number of other positions like medical writers, scientific writers, because these are the people that are going to be drafting up and authoring the protocols and the clinical documents that are involved. You'll see biostatisticians, because as we're going through those clinical research, different phases, you're going to see a lot of a need for data to be analyzed. You'll also see clinical operations, so clinical operations associate, and all types of roles across all levels under clinical operations. That is a huge aspect of the drug development process, and they, you know, do a lot with making sure that the documentation and the operational aspects of the studies are moving smoothly. You'll also see a lot of project management roles. So clinical operations and regulatory are where those project management positions tend to fall, even though they fall all across the entire spectrum of the drug development process. But a huge need for them in clinical operations and regulatory specifically. So regulatory strategy, we tend to usually have quite, you know, depending on the size of the company, a handful of project managers. Or if it's a larger company, they will have an entire staff dedicated to project management, specifically in CMC. So chemistry, manufacturing, and controls is a big area where you see a lot of project managers and just a lot of people that have a background in chemistry that are working in those capacities. So that is another opportunity. And like I said, there are so many positions and titles that I literally cannot name them all, but I hope that gives you just some good context of having a starting point for being able to search for some titles. I see one question did pop up. Let me answer that really quick. How would you suggest someone going about getting experience for a job in clinical research as a data analyst? So what I typically like to do for job descriptions, especially if you're looking to come in and you don't have any specific experience related to the role that you're interested in, I would read the job description, and usually, like most job descriptions will tell you who you are going to be reporting to in that position. And so I would look at the title of the position that you're supposed to be reporting to. So it'll say like, oh, this data analyst position will report to the director of clinical data monitoring, for example. And so this is kind of like my personal hack of how I figured out, okay, what role do I need to take as an entry-level position? I would go and look up who that person is at the company and look up other examples of people on LinkedIn that have that title of the person that you would be reporting to as a data analyst. And I would look at their job history and see what roles they held before they were, you know, the person who was the manager of that department now. More than likely, that's going to show you a direct career trajectory for how you should land that role. And it's going to show you, you know, you can basically kind of mirror exactly what they did to get in their position in order for you to get the prerequisite experience that you need to land that position. The other option is if there is a position where it's like, it's called data analyst, or it's like senior data analyst or data analyst 2. What I'll typically do is look to, you know, if there's a position called data analyst 2, then more than likely there's going to be a data analyst 1 or a data analyst entry level position. And so I'll be looking to see, okay, what is the lower level of this position? For example, if I look at the job description and it says, okay, for a senior data analyst, they want 3 to 5 years of experience. So I would say, okay, I don't have 3 to 5 years of experience, but I do have data analysis experience in the healthcare setting. So maybe instead of applying to the senior data analyst position, I'm just going to look for a data analyst position. And then you'll probably notice that the main difference between those two positions is going to be the years of experience, or maybe the degree as well, like the educational aspect. So like for a senior data analyst, maybe they ask for a master's degree, and then for a data analyst, they'll ask for a bachelor's degree with 0 to 2 years of experience. So that is typically my approach. And I know, like I said, with this process, it's not going to be cut and dry. It's not going to look the same for everybody. You have to like, you genuinely do have to be willing to like, put some skin in the game and like, you know, kind of roll up your sleeves and think outside of the box. It's not going to be as simple as like, oh, okay, I'm applying for this job, and then tomorrow I'm going to hear back, and then next week I'm going to interview, and then next week I'm going to be making $100,000. As much as, you know, we wish that the process was that easy and that simple, it's not. It takes time. Even some of the like previous clients that I've worked with on the, you know, shorter end of things, it's taken them anywhere from, you know, 1 to 3 months to even get that first call back for an interview, versus others it's taken anywhere from like 3 to 6 months to really start getting some traction, because it's going to be one of those trial and error processes that you're going through as you're applying to the positions. Because you'll notice like, okay, especially if you know, this is going to be your first time interviewing for that position, you may apply for the job, and then when you get the interview, you may bomb it. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but sometimes you may go into that position and, gosh, I hate this. I don't know why TikTok Live, after you've been on here for an hour, it like makes you do this little like human verification thing where you have to like do this like little puzzle. I hate it. It annoys me every single time. But anyways, I lose my train of thoughts. I don't remember what I was saying. But yeah, the overall theme here is going to be that it's going to take kind of rolling up your sleeves. Like you may not get it on that first try, like with the interview. So again, like you have to just make sure that you're going through the process and that you're looking for things in a unique way, because you can't just do what everybody else is doing and expect a different result, because there's so many people that are applying right now and saying, oh, I've been applying to clinical research positions for months and trying to pivot into this industry for months. And everybody's just clicking apply. They're clicking easy apply on LinkedIn. They're submitting apply, or they're pressing apply, and they're submitting their nursing resume for a position that is nothing related to nursing in the clinical research space. So it's kind of like you can't expect to hear back unless the company is really, really that desperate for hires. Okay. Next question. I currently have a pre-med degree, but have been working in tech as a customer success manager, Is that transferable to clinical research? So I would say like there's no customer success manager per se in the clinical research space. What I would say is look more into, like, if you want something that's going to be like more aligned with a customer success manager type of position, I would be looking in the pharma roles. Because I feel like probably like product manager or project manager may be the closest thing that relates. And I know you'd be maybe thinking like, okay, I'm not doing like any project management, but since you have experience with stakeholder management and client relationship management, that can be a great way to kind of like leverage that skill set. The other thing is not patient advocacy, but patient engagement roles. Patient engagement roles are really good because they're going to be more like stakeholder facing, like attending conferences, that kind of thing. But there's not really anything that is like a direct one-to-one comparison to a customer success manager in the tech space. I would say, since your degree is in pre-med, I would explore like other things that you're interested in or like that you're good at and look for those as an entry point. And it may not necessarily even be anything related to clinical research. It may be something in the biotech or in the pharma space, or it may be like this course is primarily focused on biotech, clinical research, and pharma, but those are not the only industries that exist within the life science ecosystem. There's medical device. So there's the medical device industry, there's health tech and med tech. So there's a number of other roles where in health tech and med tech, you are going to find those customer success positions. So those might be things that you want to pursue. Like I said, this course is primarily for people who already know, like, I want to go into clinical research, I want to go into pharma, I want to go into biotech. But don't close yourself off to feel like, oh, I have to put myself in this box because I want to get into clinical research. If you really, if you enjoy being a customer success manager and you just want to move over to, a different setting, or like you want to be able to kind of use your pre-med degree since you do have that background, you can look in health tech or med tech because they're going to have those types of positions. So that's going to be like, if you think of Epic or some of these EMRs or electronic medical records. So anything that you can think of that is going to be related to tech, but also have some ties to the healthcare system or the healthcare ecosystem, where it's going to be offered as a cloud-based service or a service, is going to be usually offering some of those tech adjacent positions. But these are like the biotech, clinical research, and pharma industry are mainly going to be either like more broad positions like HR, talent acquisition, education and training, project management, product manager, marketing, sales, all that type of thing on the commercial side. And then on the R&D side are going to be your more sciencey positions. So it is going to be very much like technical from a STEM perspective. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to do anything patient facing, and I would have to if I go into clinical research, because you don't have to put yourself in a box. Okay. Are there any certifications we should be getting? Now, if you are someone who knows like, okay, I want to go into one of the life sciences, I want to go into biotech, clinical research, or pharma, I would first start with getting your GCP certification, which is Good Clinical Practice Certificate. It's a self-guided free course. If you download the syllabus using the link in my bio, you can hold on one second. Let me look at the syllabus real quick. Because I did update the syllabus, and in the first version of the syllabus that I had on my site, I had accidentally forgot a letter on the link that I copied, and so when you clicked on it, it did not take you to the correct link. I'm trying to check it real quick and make sure it's the right website. Yes, okay. I don't want to give anybody wrong information. So if you go to the link in my bio and download the course syllabus, in week 1, the very first assignment is to obtain your GCP certification, and it has a direct link to take you to the free GCP certification course. And like I said, it's self-guided, so you can do it on your own time. Like I've done it myself a couple of years ago, and if you sit down and do it all at one time, you can probably get it done in like 2 or 3 hours. I think the estimated time it says it takes is like 6 hours. And that's probably because like it has some self-guided like quizzes and stuff, where in order for you to actually get the certificate, you have to complete all of the quizzes, like the checkpoint quizzes, with an 80% or higher. So since I already knew the answers to the checkpoint quizzes, I was able to kind of like get through it really quick. But for somebody that actually needs to like go through and read the material to get through that checkpoint, it may take like 5 or 6 hours, but it's definitely something you could do over a weekend, or if you like, you know, do it a couple of hours every day, you could do it in one single week. But it's really, really helpful because it's going to, just how we were talking about the drug development process, it's going to give you all of that like context. And the thing that I really love, and I don't know if anybody actually pays attention to it, but I think this is really helpful, is it links the Code of Federal Regulations. So when we're talking about like certification, or not certifications, but regulations, like FDA regulations, anything that's a regulation, it highlights and it allows you to click directly into the Code of Federal Regulations and read the regulations that FDA has, like that FDA mandates, basically related to drug development and related to the clinical trials process and protection of human subjects. So it's going to give you a pretty like, I wouldn't say super detailed, but kind of like a high level overview of regulatory, how I was talking about like safety and efficacy a little bit earlier about phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. It'll give you an overview on that and the reporting requirements for adverse events. It also talks about compliance and quality assurance and documentation and all that good stuff. So I think it's pretty much like a crash course on clinical research, but it's also applicable to biotech and to the pharmaceutical industry as well. Okay. Thank you so much. I'll definitely try to get them both, especially supervisors, LinkedIn experience. Never heard of patient engagement roles. I'll definitely look into that. Okay, great. Let me see. I feel like there were a couple other things I wanted to talk about. Okay, so we talked about the drug development process. We went through preclinical, phase 1 through 3, post-marketing. And okay, yeah, so this actually ties into the next thing that I wanted to talk about. So the next thing we'll kind of like focus on, and we'll talk about this over the next coming weeks as well. So if you have any specific questions that you try to like apply some of these things this week and you have questions about it, come back to the live, ask more questions. That's exactly what I'm here for. So how to position yourself for these positions. So I answered Ivy and Maya's question about, okay, things that you can do to help find the right roles to apply to and make sure that when you're applying to those positions that they align with your skill set. But so there's a couple of different approaches, and I kind of talked about this a minute ago, but so one approach is to match your skills to the roles. Now that just simply means taking the things that you already have a degree in or you already have tangible experience in and matching them to roles that require those tangible skill sets. So for example, if you're somebody that has a science background, then clinical may be a directly related field to apply that, especially if you have a science and you have healthcare experience, like you have a biology degree and you've also worked as a medical assistant or you've worked as a CNA, then a clinical position may be good. It may be a good fit. So clinical operations, any of those like clinical research coordinator positions, clinical research assistant, if you need an entry-level type of role to look into, and then eventually like a clinical research associate if that's something that you want to pursue. The next thing is going to be like research. So if you're someone who really enjoyed research in undergrad, like maybe you did some like research projects with some of the faculty or staff at your university and you want to get more into the research side of things, then specific research roles would be a good potential fit, especially if you're someone who has a lot of experience in the lab. Then some of those scientist positions, especially like associate or assistant scientists, can be great fits if you have that STEM or scientific background. So then kind of moving into healthcare, and I talked about like with clinical, if you have science and healthcare kind of experience together, then clinical could be a good fit. If you have a healthcare background exclusively, so maybe you don't have a degree or you have an associate's degree, and you have healthcare experience exclusively, then clinical trials roles or anything related to like the patient-facing aspects or the study startup would be a great fit, because again, this is going to be directly related to the work that you've already done, where you're counseling patients, maybe talking to patients. Maybe you are really good with explaining complicated things to patients. So if you have done any of those things, then you may be good with a clinical trials position, especially anything that is going to be related to getting patients enrolled for the study. So doing screening calls and that type of thing to talk to patients about, hey, this is the study. This is how much the compensation is for participating in it. Explaining the informed consent document to them and all the testing and blood work and things that are going to go into the process of participating in that trial. Another opportunity is medical affairs. Now, these, even though it's healthcare specific, typically medical affairs roles look for more advanced degrees. So if you have an advanced clinical degree, like a nurse practitioner or a PA, like a physician's assistant, or PharmDs, you also see like a lot of RNs, sometimes RNs that have some extensive experience in a certain therapeutic area, maybe a good fit for a medical affairs position. Maybe a good fit for a medical affairs position. But that's going to be things like medical affairs or medical information. So really just looking into the science and the data that is available for certain products from a company. And you'll notice like a lot of medical affairs positions tend to fall under pharmaceutical companies rather than biotech and clinical research. So these are going to be more so exclusive to the pharmaceutical industry. And then I talked about this a little bit earlier as well, but if you are someone who really loves writing, I do not. It's something that I'm good at, but I don't like doing. So initially when I was looking to pivot from pharmacy to the life science industry, I knew that I was good at writing, so I was applying to medical writing positions. I'm glad I did not end up getting a medical writing position as my first job because I probably would have hated it, but I was getting calls back for interviews for medical writing opportunities because I had lots of samples of my writing from school, from different journal clubs and different events that I had been a part of where I had writing samples. And then there were usually some type of like writing prompt that they give you, and you have to give them like a sample back of like based on the prompt that they provide. And if you do well with that, then you move on to an interview. So medical writing and also regulatory affairs could be another role if you are good at writing. And regulatory is actually the functional area that I ended up going into. It's not a ton of writing, but we do have to do like a lot of editing. So if someone else authors a document, we do a lot of like reviewing and like reading a lot of long documents to look for inconsistencies, to make sure that it's compliant, to read kind of between the lines and see if there's any way that we can make sure that the messaging aligns with the regulatory guidance or the regulatory guidelines that FDA has set. So regulatory is also a good role if you have strong writing skills, but maybe aren't someone who wants to write a lot. And so then another approach for positioning yourself for position. So we talk about, okay, matching skills to roles. So looking at the technical skill set that you have or the degree that you have and looking for an adjacent position that allows you to use that degree. Then you have entry-level titles. So this kind of goes back to what I was saying before about, okay, maybe you see a position online that says Clinical Research Coordinator 2 or Clinical Research Coordinator 3, and you look at the job experience and the requirements, and it's kind of a little bit over your head, but like, you could apply to it and maybe you get a call back, but you personally like say, okay, I only have 3 years of working experience and they're asking for 5 to 7 years of working experience. In that case, I would be looking for the next step down. So rather than looking for a Clinical Research Coordinator 3 position, I would be looking for a regular Clinical Research Coordinator position or a Clinical Research Coordinator 2 position, and kind of compare and contrast what the differences are in the experience that they're looking for. Same thing, like if you are looking at a regulatory affairs manager position and you say, oh, okay, they're asking for 7 to 10 years of experience and I only have 5, maybe look for a regulatory affairs specialist or like a regulatory affairs associate or a senior regulatory affairs associate, and looking at how much experience they're asking for, because it may be a better fit. And that way you have a better chance at landing an interview for that position. We already talked about certifications to boost your credibility, but I think this is really great for anybody who is pivoting from one industry to the other, especially if you already have a scientific or like a life science focused degree. Getting that GCP or that good, I'm like talking all over my words, I'm tired. Getting that good clinical practice certification is going to be really good because it just kind of shows you being proactive and shows that you are taking the necessary steps to establish a foundation of clinical research and understanding ICH. So ICH and GCP kind of go hand in hand. You'll see if you look at any clinical research job description, you'll usually see something in the requirements or the preferred certifications, ICH or GCP. So that's why this kind of like kills two birds with one stone. It kind of like knocks out one of those things that you already need to do anyways to be qualified for the role. And I had some notes that I took beforehand because I just wanted to make sure I remembered everything I wanted to talk about. So I made a couple of scenarios for you guys. So based on what we've talked about this evening, and I know some people have kind of trickled off, so thank you guys that have stayed on and found this helpful. I appreciate you guys' engagement and stuff throughout the conversation. But so I'm gonna give you guys a couple of scenarios, and I want you to, based on what we talked about, just kind of let me know if you remember or if we needed to discuss a little bit further what trial phase that these scenarios relate to. So I'm going to just read the scenario off, and just in the comments, you can just leave a comment with the phase that you think this scenario relates to. Okay, so the first one is a pharmaceutical company is testing a new migraine medication. They have already tested it on 80 healthy volunteers, and now they're giving the drug to 250 people who suffer from migraines. What phase of clinical trials would that be? Preclinical, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or post-marketing phase 4? Okay, perfect. Everybody's getting the answer correct. So thank you guys. So yes, the answer to that would be phase 2. And the reason that the answer is phase 2 is because they're testing on actual patients and not just healthy subjects or healthy volunteers for effectiveness. And we know that phase 1 only involves safety and not effectiveness. Okay, so next example. A cholesterol lowering drug was FDA approved last year. A few doctors start noticing rare side effects, so the company sets up a monitoring program to track new patient data. What phase would this be? I think there were a few keywords in there that should have hinted at the right phase that would fall under, but you guys let me know what you're thinking. Okay, so it looks like everybody got 100% on this one. Also, phase 4 is correct because we're talking about post-marketing surveillance. And the reason that we know it's post-marketing surveillance is because the first portion of the scenario said that the drug was approved last year. And we're kind of seeing signals of rare side effects. So this is something that's happening after the drug's been approved and patients have taken it, and we're starting to notice new trends and patterns. Okay, so final scenario. A biotech company is developing a new weight loss drug. They want to test it in 4,000 obese patients across multiple hospitals to compare it to an existing treatment. What phase would this be? I'm gonna read this one again because I don't see anybody leaving any comments. A biotech company is developing a new weight loss drug. They want to test it in 4,000 obese patients across multiple hospitals to compare it to an existing treatment. What phase is this? Okay, so it looks like you guys are getting it right. Okay, so the answer to this one is phase 3, and the reason that it's phase 3 is because this is a large scale. That was one of the main things that it talked about is 4,000. So we know that when we talked about the numbers and the how big the study was, depending on what phase it is, 4,000 patients would kind of immediately tell me that this is a phase 3 study, because it's a large scale comparison and we're doing a head-to-head study. So kind of when we talked about earlier, ibuprofen versus Tylenol. If we're doing two products that are, have similar indications or the same indication, and we're testing them head-to-head to see which one performs better, that's going to be a phase 3 study. And this is, rapid fire, just random, in addition to that. So what is the other type of study that I said typically is tested in phase 3? So we have a head-to-head study, which is where we're testing our new treatment versus the competitor product. And what was the other type of study that we see in phase 3, where we're getting our confirmatory evidence or confirmatory efficacy? I'm gonna give you guys a hint. It involves a sugar pill, or like what we call a sugar pill. So what type of study would that be? Okay, yay. Okay, so it looks like everybody's getting it. Yep, so that would be placebo. That's typically one of the other major types of studies that we see for a phase 3 confirmatory evidence study. Okay. Let's see, is there anything else that I had? I think that's about it. Okay, and the timing is kind of perfect on that too, because we're right at 9:21. So usually I kind of like wrap things up with asking, like kind of opening the floor for any additional questions. I know we had some like guided conversation, and we talked through some things this evening that were related to the videos that I posted. And again, if you did not get a chance to watch those videos in detail, the ones that I posted over the last couple of days, definitely go check those out. Please engage with them, drop a comment, repost. Because I know, honestly, I make these videos primarily for minority people who like have backgrounds in STEM just like myself, because typically we are the ones who are not exposed to a lot of these opportunities, like our counterparts. But of course, anybody is welcome to go and like take a look at the content, and if it provides value, then it's for everyone. But I do this for people that look like myself, or people of color, because I don't see a lot of people that look like me in the clinical research, in the biotech, in the pharma space. And I talk about all these topics on my lives and on my page because I have worked in every single one of these industries. I got into regulatory affairs by way of clinical research. So I started off my career in regulatory affairs working at an academic medical center. So there I was involved in study startup. I worked very closely with the CRAs, with the clinical research coordinators. I was not officially a medical writer, but I have written clinical protocols and informed consent documents for patients before, because of a shortage of medical writers in our department. And then from there, I moved on to a large pharmaceutical company for a vaccines company, one of the largest vaccine companies in the world, and was involved in a lot of their regulatory strategy aspects, as well as labeling, advertising, and promotion. And after I left there, I wanted more of a challenge, so I moved over to the biotech space in rare diseases, specifically pediatric rare diseases, metabolic disorders, neurologic conditions, and have been in that space ever since. I was not a huge fan of one of the companies I was at. I was not a huge fan of the programs that they had. I just felt like the science was not as good as it needed to be in order for the product to get approved. And so I really have to it's really important for me as a pharmacist by training to make sure that I'm aligned with the science and that I truly believe in the product, because I would hate for a product to get approved by a company that I work for and somebody, that looks like me, or especially a family member of mine, ends up taking that product and I can't confidently say that I believe in that product, and I trust that that product is not going to do you any harm. So I have worked for companies like that, and ultimately decided to move and part ways with those organizations to make sure that I'm doing things that are going to you know, that I can like, basically like products that I believe in. So hopefully you guys, like, as you're going through this process, it gives you like some context to the drug development process and helps you be able to have a strong understanding of what it is that you're looking for. And my hope is that as you go through this process, that you gain the confidence to apply for positions, not out of scarcity or out of, you know, I feel like I have to apply to this position, even though I don't really want to do this, but I just have to take whatever I can get. But, you know, be confident in your ability to, you know, stand your ground and know that the experience that you have is valuable. It just matters how you market it and the way that you are able to tell your story. Because I know a lot of people kind of like have that scarcity mindset of when they're applying for positions, they're just like, okay, well, whatever job, you know, I want to get in clinical research so bad. And so whatever opportunity I get an offer for first, I'm going to take it. I feel like it's really important so that you're not spinning your wheels and end up in that same process of like getting into another job that you dislike or that you hate. Because believe me, I've been there before, that you're vetting out these companies with a fine tooth comb, that you're really going through and making sure that the things that are important to you, that the company also aligns with. And that as you're going through this process, that you're making a list of things that are your non-negotiables as well, because it's not just an opportunity for the company to say, okay, like, does she meet all of our requirements? But it's also an opportunity for you to say, okay, I'm interested in this industry, but does this company specifically meet all the requirements that I have? Like, if you say, okay, I'm making $45,000 right now and I want to make $60,000, like, if you want to make $60,000, there's no need of saying like, okay, well, they're offering me like, I make 45 right now, but they're offering me 47, but it's a job in clinical research, so I have to take it. Like, you got to stand for something. Because I noticed that the people that do that take that approach, when they get into these industries and like when they land that role that was supposed to be a dream role, a lot of times they do not like it because they did not take the time to vet out and really have their must-haves in their positions. And so that's something that I always like recommend to other people. Just make sure that you have that growth mindset, that mindset of abundance as you're going through this process, because it is going to get tough. I know people like get burnt out from applying to jobs, you know, especially like clinical research, biotech, pharma, all that good stuff. It's one of those it's one of those processes that is like, it's not about like who can apply for the most jobs. It's about who can endure and like go through the process, and make it to being able to secure that opportunity. Because a lot of people, they give up like too soon in, you know, they'll like go really hard in the beginning. And then when they don't make a lot of traction or progress, they'll just like, okay, you know what, I'll just stay in my same job. And it truly is one of those industries where, and I wouldn't say like, oh, like your life is going to instantly become better, but it does offer flexibility. And I feel like flexibility is one of those things that you can't really put a price on. Whereas me working as like a pharmacist, or like my background, like in the clinical setting where I have to get up and go physically be at work every day. And especially being like a pharmacist, in the community setting specifically, like I worked in hospital as well, but like I worked in hospital in, states where the patient demographic was, there were not a lot of, clinicians that look like me. There were not a lot of patients that look like me. And so as a result of that, I've had patients say, oh, I don't want to be seen by that pharmacist because she's Black. Or I've, you know, gone to my part-time job at a retail pharmacy and been talked to like a dog. And so having that flexibility of not just having to accept anything, is really important to me. So I try to like be as transparent as possible and, share that with you guys, so that when you're going through this process, you don't have to do it multiple times. You can get in, find a job that you genuinely enjoy. You don't have to love it, but finding a position that you genuinely enjoy can make an impact, can make good money, and can go and live your life outside of that job. So that is all I'm here to do, is just kind of shed some light on some of these opportunities and provide exposure, and just talk to you guys about things that are not readily available in one specific area on the internet. Because I feel like clinical research, like the life science industries, are one of those things that you have to just go and get bits and pieces of information from different places. There's not a source of truth for all the information for you to just like learn. And a lot of times there are so many people who are like not willing to share their experiences either. Or it's like a needle in a haystack trying to like go and have all these like 1,000,001 conversations with people, to get the information that you're looking for. So hopefully this was helpful. You guys let me know if you have any specific questions. I'll be back on live next Sunday. And like I said, if you just joined and you weren't on here the entire time, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel because I post all of the lives in full length on YouTube. It should be up within the next 24 hours. I'll be downloading it tonight and uploading it by tomorrow at the absolute latest. And I have a couple more videos that I'll be posting this week because we're going to continue based on the syllabus to progress and get you guys up to speed so that you can start applying and hopefully land some new jobs. Thank you, T. All right. I'll see you guys later.